I know. Pay no attention to the pay-per-view event in the background because tonight we have a lot to discuss and a lot to get to. So let's get to it. Starting with the fact that the participants in the Iron Survivor Challenge wildcard match have been announced, but I will touch on those next week ahead of the final go home edition of NXT ahead of NXT Deadline because NXT Deadline is set to take place December the 10th, and we will be doing predictions like we have for every other pay-per-view event since I started doing the predictions. So we will hit NXT Deadline, and I will even do predictions also for Final Battle and Winter is Coming, as well as we wrap up 2022 with some spectacular, action packed wrestling events still to come. But we got a lot of updates to come now, as Brian Kendrick was featured as a producer at the Survivor Series during Ronda Rousey's match with Chauncey after I think it was earlier in the year when Brian Kendrick was last a part of WWE, but due to some controversial statements, Kendrick was let go from the company and has not seen the light of day since. But Ronda Rousey, who was trained by Brian Kendrick, or partially trained by Brian Kendrick, asked the company to bring Kendrick back for the Survivor Series, but it was just Survivor Series that Kendrick was back for and nothing else, as he is not with the company anymore. It was a one-shot thing, and it was a favor to Ronda for the pay-per-view. Other than that, she will have to do without her former trainer for the future because Brian is not back with WWE. Speaking of people that may be coming back soon, it is been a long time since we've seen Charlotte Flair in a WWE ring. Actually, we have not seen Charlotte in a WWE ring since WrestleMania Backlash. It took me a second to remember, actually. That's how long it's been since we've seen Charlotte. But we have not seen Charlotte since WrestleMania Backlash. And honestly, it would be nice to see Charlotte back in the WWE ring after all this time. But WWE needs to formulate properly the event that Charlotte's return would be, because I can guarantee you that it would be a ratings booster, and maybe allow Ronda Rousey to just beat up people a little bit more and maybe build someone up to fight Ronda Rousey. Or you lean on somebody like Charlotte Flair. But my question is, has Becky or Charlotte won a Royal Rumble? I think Charlotte has, because Charlotte won the Royal Rumble a few years ago and ended up wrestling Rhea Ripley. And ended up wrestling Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania for the NXT Women's Championship. I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong. But as far as Becky, I actually think Becky was the first winner of the WWE Women's Royal Rumble. So maybe I'm gonna switch my idea, and I think it's possible that the company goes with Shayna Baszler as a challenger for Ronda Rousey for WrestleMania. But Charlotte, there is no update, but Charlotte is teasing a WWE return.
Here is your winner, William
Very, very soon. She is teasing a WWE return very, very soon. And it is something that I, for one, am very excited to see, because I think the women's division would benefit tremendously from seeing Charlotte back in the ring. Speaking of an update for the roster that would benefit both the roster and the person, Robert Roode has been on the shelf since the summer with an undisclosed injury, but we do know that in a previous update that Robert Roode did get surgery done down in Alabama. So whatever he did get done, he is in the process of rehabbing. So it is possible that we could see Robert Roode back in the ring very soon, because he was also pictured in a recent photo shoot having to do with the ongoing World Cup tournament. No, this is not my way of saying Robert Roode was meant to be in the World Cup tournament or featured or is going to be featured in some way, shape, or form in the tournament. It is just my way of saying that Robert Roode was a part of a photo shoot. So that means that they wanted to, put up some promo photos, including Robert Roode, and have him included. So I would say, if anything, that means that Bobby was back with the roster and traveling with the company. And now, more than likely, they're just trying to figure out a way to bring him back. But I am excited about Robert Roode coming back because Triple H was a big fan of Robert Roode down in NXT, booked him very strong as NXT World's Champion during his time on the roster. And even though Bobby has been booked excessively strong on the main roster since his debut as a member of the tag team division, I do think that having Triple H by his side will just benefit the Glorious One as a member of the main roster, and should allow us to finally see what Bobby Roode can do as a single star on the main roster, because it is expected that Bobby will come back as a member of the SmackDown roster with Dolph Ziggler being on Raw, so the Dirty Dogs are finally done. Speaking of people that might be done, AEW may be losing another tag team or a tag team with the possibility of interesting choice for a move there for William Regal, but AEW might be losing another tag team, as Dax Harwood did go on record to say that his and Cash's contract are set to expire. That's the word, set to expire in April, at the end of April of next year. So it is possible that if AEW does not renew, that Cash and Dax Harwood will be heading to the Indies and just do the indie thing for a bit, because that's something that they've been enjoying outside of working in AEW. And I think they just want to be able to do their own thing, which is something that they have every right to be able to do. So it is something that they will try and do if their contract is not renewed by AEW, or they decide to just take a break from mainstream wrestling for a little bit, because how long have they been a part of the mainstream wrestling scene? So they may just make the decision to back off a little bit and step away. Whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, it's up to Cash and Dax in that situation. And I will, honestly, I will admire them if they do choose to take a little break from the mainstream wrestling for a bit and go to the indies and do their own thing, because that would be, them staying in AEW, they've had an amazing 2022, and in my opinion, should be considered tag team of the year, if not at least in consideration for tag team of the year next to probably the Usos. And maybe the Acclaimed. I'd put the Acclaimed up there. Definitely. As tag team of the year. And surprisingly, Swerve in Our Glory, there's a lot of possibilities of people that could be tag team of the year. But the fact of the matter is, FTR is at least thinking about and debating the idea of doing the indie thing next year after their contracts with AEW expire in April of 2023. Speaking of people whose contracts are not going to expire anytime soon, the Impact World Champion and Impact Digital Media Champion. Say his name and he will appear. That man's name is Joe Hendry. Will be off in Europe defending the Impact Wrestling Digital Media Championship. He just defended the title in Poland and will be defending the title in Newcastle at a North Wrestling event in Newcastle, I believe this weekend. So he may be the first person to defend the title across the pond. if Matt Cardona did not do it when he was in the UK as digital media champion. But the last thing we want to touch on is, quickly, that Stokely Hathaway reference, the idea that had what happened at All Out not happened, then somebody who is no longer with the company, because there is still mixed reports about that, but somebody who is no longer with the company would have been who the person who feuded with the firm following All Out. So it would have been interesting to see the firm going against that former two-time AEW World Champion, who shall remain nameless. But the fact of the matter is, would it have been a feud, or would it have been just a time waster or a placeholder for that Chicago native? Because how the firm was booked, you don't know how strong they would have been booked against CM Punk. You know what I mean? You don't know how strong they would have been booked against Punk, and it's crazy to think that that would have been what happened after All Out, and just how much things have changed because of what happened at All Out. But that's my thoughts on wrestling. Let me know your thoughts on everything that I talked about down below, and anything you want my thoughts on, feel free to leave it in the comment section. But if you're enjoying content like this, feel free to drop a like and subscribe to the channel, because any and all interactions are very much appreciated and do help us fight the algorithm to get a little bit more attention on this content. But before you go, I suggest to ding dong the notification bell to always know when a new video is up on the channel. And I will see you all again soon.